The moment I stepped into the office, everything I'd been holding back for so long crashed down on me. The weight of 3 years of silent neglect, unshed tears, and the constant, gnawing feeling of being invisible hit me like a freight train. The anger, the bitterness, it was all there, waiting to be unleashed. Ethan Cooper sat at his desk, oblivious, flipping through papers. I could feel the anger pulse through my veins. I could almost hear the echo of my own voice as I walked toward him, dragging the divorce papers in my hand like a weapon. "Ethan," I said, my voice icy, controlled. "I want a divorce." He looked up, his face a mask of confusion and irritation. "What are you talking about?" He sounded so calm, as if I were nothing more than an annoying interruption in his day. His indifference burned me. I placed the papers on his desk, my hand trembling slightly, but not with fear, no. It was with the force of everything I'd held in for far too long. "You heard me. I want a divorce." His lips twisted in disbelief, like he couldn't even comprehend the gravity of what I was saying. "Emily, this isn't the time. I'm in the middle of something important." He tried to dismiss me like I was nothing. Again, that's when the full weight of my decision hit me. I wasn't just asking for a divorce. I was cutting him out of my life completely. No more pretending. No more waiting for him to notice me. I'd been a fool once, giving everything for a man who couldn't even see me. "You don't get to dismiss me anymore, Ethan," I said, my voice cutting through the cold, sterile air of the office. "We've been married for 3 years, and in all that time, you never once looked me in the eye. Not once. Do you even know when my birthday is? Do you know what I like to do when I'm not stuck in this prison of a marriage?" His eyes flickered. Briefly panic, guilt, maybe even shame, but it was fleeting, disappearing as quickly as it came. His voice was sharp, defensive. "What's gotten into you? You've always known how my work is. It's not easy being who I am." I let out a harsh laugh, feeling the power of my words rise like a wave. "Work? Is that your excuse? You've been too busy to even care whether I'm alive or dead. And now that I've finally woken up to who you really are, you want to tell me how hard your life is." He stood up, his expression changing from confusion to anger, and I almost welcomed it. At least then, he felt something. He stepped toward me, but I didn't flinch. "You're crazy, Emily. You're making a mistake," he spat, grabbing my arm in a desperate attempt to pull me closer. But I wrenched myself free, staring into his eyes with a coldness that would have frozen most people on the spot, but not him. No, he wasn't the type to see my pain. He never had been. Not anymore. "This marriage was a mistake from the start," I said, the words finally coming out like they were meant to. "Do you know what I realized? That the only thing I've been holding on to is the idea of us. The truth is, I've been nothing more than your shadow." I turned and walked out without another word, feeling his angry gaze on my back. But for the first time in years, I felt free. I wasn't walking away from him, I was walking toward something else, toward myself. And that thought made the air feel lighter, even as the building behind me seemed to close in. I barely made it to the car before my phone rang. It was Linda Foster, Ethan's mother. I rolled my eyes before answering. If she thought I was going to listen to her now, she was gravely mistaken. "Emily, where are you? Ethan's been calling nonstop. He's worried." "Worried? About me? Funny, that's not how he acted when I was dying in my last life. He didn't seem worried then. But now that I've had enough, suddenly he's concerned." Linda's voice trembled. "This is foolishness, Emily. You can't just walk away from him. You've been his wife for 3 years. What about your vows?" "My vows? My vows were broken the moment he decided I was just a name on a piece of paper," I snapped. "I'm done playing this role, Linda. I'm done." I hung up, knowing that I was setting a dangerous precedent. A woman like me didn't just leave her husband, especially a man with so much power. But I had nothing left to lose. Nothing but my pride. And that was everything. As I stepped out of the car, the sun beat down on me, harsh and unyielding, much like the world I'd left behind. But I wasn't scared. I was liberated. I was angry. And I was going to get everything I deserved. The next morning, as I walked into the law firm, the weight of the decision felt almost unreal. I had no idea what this would cost me. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going back. This wasn't some impulsive whim, some angry outburst. This was my reality now, and I was ready to fight for it. The lawyer raised an eyebrow as he looked up from his desk, taking in the determined expression on my face. "Miss Lane," he started cautiously, "I've reviewed your case. You realize this won't be easy, right? I didn't hesitate. I don't care. I want this divorce. I want to be free. I could feel the heat rising inside me again, the anger bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Ethan's indifference, his cold, dismissive attitude had been eating away at me for too long. He had never truly seen me, never even cared enough to ask what I needed. What kind of marriage was that? The lawyer looked at me thoughtfully. I'm just saying, your husband is a high-ranking officer. Getting a divorce without his consent, especially given his position, could be problematic. I'm not asking for his permission, I replied sharply. I'm taking control of my life now. He can fight it if he wants, but it's over. It was over long before I walked into his office yesterday. He paused, and I saw the flicker of admiration in his eyes. I'll prepare the paperwork, but be prepared for a battle. There are people who will do whatever it takes to protect his career. Let them, I said coldly. I'm not scared. I left the law firm with a sense of finality. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about justice. Ethan had treated me like I was invisible for years, and now it was my turn to make him see me really see me. For the first time, I wasn't doing this for him. I was doing it for me. But as the days passed, I began to feel the weight of what I was doing. The calls from Ethan's mother, Linda, started coming more frequently. At first, I ignored them, not wanting to get sucked back into the emotional black hole that was my marriage. But then, one evening, I couldn't help myself. The phone rang again, and something in me snapped. Emily, please, just talk to him. He's been beside himself. He doesn't know what's going on with you. I nearly laughed. Does he really not know Linda? Or is he just pretending he doesn't? Her voice faltered, and for the first time, I heard the vulnerability in it. You don't understand. He's been under a lot of stress with his work. It's been tough for both of you, but that doesn't mean it has to end like this. I felt the bitterness rise in my chest. Tough? You know what's been tough? Being ignored, being left alone when I was dying. He didn't even show up. And now he expects me to just forget all of that because he's having a rough time at work? Linda didn't respond immediately, but I could hear her sniffling, like she was on the verge of tears. Emily, I'm begging you, she pleaded. Please don't go through with this. You're tearing him apart. I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of old wounds, the ones I had carefully hidden away for years. But the anger was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, and it wasn't going away anytime soon. He's already torn me apart, Linda. I've been broken for years, and now I'm picking up the pieces. If you really want to help him, you'll tell him the truth. He didn't lose me, I lost him. He lost me the day he decided I wasn't worth fighting for. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I hung up before she could say anything else. The next few days blurred together: more paperwork, more calls from Linda, and Ethan's increasingly desperate attempts to reach me. His voice on the other end of the line was always the same, pleading, empty, and trying to guilt me into coming back. But I was done listening to him. I didn't care anymore. But then, a message popped up on my phone one afternoon. It was from him, a simple text, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to end like this. I stared at the words for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest. A small part of me wanted to reply, to forgive him, but another part of me, the stronger part, knew better. This wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't even about him. This was about me taking back my life. I turned off my phone and went back to the work that was slowly becoming my new reality. I had been a writer before I met Ethan, and now it was time to return to that life. I had always put my career on the back burner for him, for our marriage, but I wasn't doing that anymore. I was going to reclaim every part of myself that I'd let slip away. As I sat at my desk, typing out a new piece for a travel magazine, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. Every word I wrote felt like a small victory. Every sentence was a declaration that I was still here, that I was still capable of doing something for myself. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was about the rediscovery of my own worth. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the beginning of something bigger. I wasn't just fighting for freedom. I was fighting for justice. Justice for myself. Justice for the woman I had once been and had lost. It didn't take long before the calls stopped coming from Ethan, but his presence lingered. He wasn't giving up, of course. He wasn't. Ethan never gave up when it came to what he thought was rightfully his. And in his mind, I was his. I was his wife, his possession, his duty. But as I sat alone in my apartment, the quiet became suffocating. It was like the silence was mocking me, telling me that I'd made a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. My phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. It was Linda again, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat there staring at the screen for a few seconds. I almost answered, almost, but the anger I had pushed deep inside me surged to the surface. It was no longer just anger, it was fury. Ethan had pushed me to the brink for years, and now I was ready to make him feel the pain he'd inflicted on me. The only way to make him see me really see me was to make him hurt, and I would. I slammed my phone down and stood up, pacing the room. Every inch of me burned with the need for retribution, for justice. For so long, I had been the one silently enduring, always waiting for him to notice me. But now, I realized the truth: he would never notice me, not in the way I needed. He only saw what was convenient. He saw the wife who supported him, who did everything he asked, and asked for nothing in return. But now I was done. I made a decision that day. I wasn't just going to leave him, I was going to make sure he understood why. I would make him feel the weight of what he had done. Every time he ignored me, every time he chose something or someone else over me, I would make him regret it. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was war. I needed leverage, something that would crush him. And I knew exactly where to look. The day I went to the lawyer's office felt like a blur. I barely registered the conversations, the paperwork, the questions they asked me. My mind was set on one thing: revenge. I had lived in his shadow for far too long. I had lived for him. Now, it was time for him to see what it felt like to be ignored, to be pushed aside. When I left the office, the papers were ready. The divorce was imminent, but there was something else: a little surprise. I was going to take his pride away. I wasn't going to walk out of this with just a divorce. No, I was going to ensure that his career, his precious reputation, would be torn apart along with our marriage. I could almost hear Ethan's voice in my head, filled with that trademark arrogance of his. You wouldn't dare. I could feel his smugness. And I realized something in that moment: he thought I was weak. He thought I would fold. But this time, I wasn't the quiet, suffering wife. I was the one who would destroy everything he'd built. The next few days were a blur of legal papers, meetings, and late-night phone calls. But through it all, something began to shift in me. The anger, the bitterness, began to fade, replaced by something colder, something more dangerous. I wasn't fighting to reclaim my life anymore. I was fighting for power. Power to take back what I had lost. Power to show Ethan that his world could crumble just like mine had. I wasn't going to be a passive observer in my own life. I was going to take control. Then the phone call came. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me told me I had to. It was Ethan. Emily. His voice cracked with emotion. I know what you're doing. I know you've hired a lawyer. And I just want to understand. Why? Why are you doing this? We can fix this. We can go back to how things were. I felt the cold smile creep onto my lips. We can't go back, Ethan. You're too late. You should have noticed me when I was still here. But now it's over. His silence spoke louder than words. He had nothing to say. He never had. I loved you, he whispered, almost pleading. I still love you. Please, Emily, don't do this. I laughed. It was bitter. It was empty. Love me? Ethan, you never loved me. You loved the idea of me, the perfect, silent, obedient wife. But you never saw me. You never saw the person I was. And now you want me back? There was a pause. I could almost hear him taking a breath, trying to find the right words. But the words would never come. Not now. Not after everything. I'm done, I said, my voice calm, yet filled with finality. He hung up, and I felt it. I felt the weight of his loss. But more than that, I felt the power in that moment. I had finally taken control. For the first time, it wasn't about him or what he wanted. It was about me. I was walking away from a man who never truly saw me. I was walking away from a life that had never been mine to begin with. And in that moment, I knew that I was capable of far more than I had ever imagined. But the battle was far from over. Ethan didn't let go easily. Days turned into weeks, and the pressure from his side mounted. Linda called more frequently, her voice pleading, desperate. But I wasn't swayed. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't respond to Ethan's texts. Instead, I focused on what mattered: my own future, my own success. I was done being a footnote in his life. I was going to be the author of my own story. And then, the unexpected happened. One morning, I received a message from an old colleague. "Emily, I have a project. It's perfect for you. A deep dive into ancient towns in Yunnan. Are you interested?" I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling the weight of everything I had been through. This was my chance to rebuild, to prove to myself that I was still the woman I had once been. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I replied. "Tell me more." As the details of the project came together, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. The kind of excitement that only comes when you know you're on the verge of something new, something real. But as the excitement built, so did the tension. Ethan wasn't going to let go without a fight. He would try everything: his influence, his connections, his power. But this time, I was ready for it. The tension kept building. But so did my resolve. I knew Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight. He would do whatever it took to keep me tethered to him. But I had made my choice. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about something deeper: my own healing, my own transformation. And if Ethan wanted to fight me for control, then so be it. The day I left for Yunnan, I could feel the weight of everything I was leaving behind. The memories, the pain, the bitterness of the past 3 years, they were all still there. But I was choosing not to let them define me anymore. As I boarded the flight, something inside me shifted again. It was like I was stepping into a new version of myself, a version who didn't need validation from anyone, not even Ethan. The project in Yunnan turned out to be more than just work. It was a revelation. The people I met, the culture I immersed, myself in every experience felt like a piece of me I had forgotten, slowly being pieced back together. I remembered why I had fallen in love with writing in the first place. It wasn't for fame or recognition. It was because writing was my voice, and for the first time, I felt heard. But as the days passed in Yunnan, Ethan's presence still lingered. His messages kept coming. Some were polite, others were desperate. Each one stung, but I couldn't afford to let them consume me. I wasn't the woman I used to be, and I wasn't going to be swayed by guilt anymore. One day, as I sat at a small cafe in Yunnan, I received a text from him. This time, there was something different about it. There was no pleading. There was no "I miss you." It was cold, almost calculated. "Emily, I know what you're doing. I know. You're trying to ruin me. You're not going to get away with this." It was like a punch to the gut. For a moment, my breath caught in my throat. The audacity, the sheer arrogance. He still thought he could control me, manipulate me. But that was his mistake. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was beyond his threats now. But then, later that night, as I walked back to my hotel room, I heard the voice I never thought I'd hear again. "Emily." I froze. It was like my heart stopped beating for a moment. Ethan was standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes sunken. He looked almost like a ghost, a shadow of the man I once knew. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice sharp. His expression was unreadable. I had to see you. I've been trying to reach you, and I don't know what to do anymore." I could see the desperation in his eyes, but it didn't sway me. I didn't feel sympathy. I didn't feel anything except cold indifference. "Why now, Ethan?" I asked, my voice steady, but beneath it lay a storm of emotions. "Why after all this time? Why after everything you've put me through? Why now?" He stepped closer, but I didn't move. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I've been trying to fix it, trying to make things right, but you won't even give me a chance." "Emily, please." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream at him, but I held it in. "Fix it? You had your chance, Ethan. You had years of chances. You didn't care. You never cared." His face twisted with regret, but it only made me feel colder. This wasn't the man I had once loved. This was a stranger, begging for a second chance, but too late to make a difference. "I never loved you, did I?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. He didn't answer right away, and that silence was all the answer I needed. "No," I said quietly. "You didn't." He winced, like my words physically hurt him, and for the first time, I felt nothing. The weight of 3 years of neglect had built up, and now it was all pouring out, every ounce of bitterness, every ounce of pain. But there was no anger left in me, just exhaustion. I came here to tell you, he said slowly, almost as if rehearsing the words, that I still love you. That I can change. I can be the man you want. I can be the man I should have been. I stared at him, feeling nothing. I'm done. We're done. The words were final, and as I said them, something deep inside me clicked. I wasn't the same woman who had married him, who had waited for him, who had sacrificed so much for him. I was something else now, stronger, sharper, more whole, and there was no going back. He reached out, his hand trembling. Please, I can't lose you. I don't know what to do without you. I took a step back. You never knew what to do with me when you had me, Ethan. So don't pretend you're losing something you never valued in the first place. His face hardened. You'll regret this. You'll regret walking away from me. I met his gaze and felt nothing but indifference. Maybe, but I'll never regret walking away from you. I turned, walking away without looking back. The door slammed behind me, and as I stepped into the night, I felt the weight of the past finally lift. The chains were gone, and I was free. Days turned into weeks, and I settled into my new routine in Yunnan. The project was everything I needed: immersive, exhausting, and exhilarating. I was finally living for myself, but there was a part of me, the part I wasn't ready to confront, that still wondered if I'd made the right choice. Had I done enough? Had I truly cut the final tie with Ethan, or was I just fooling myself? The answer came when I received a message from Linda. Her tone was different now, softer, like she was finally starting to see things from my perspective. Emily, she wrote, I understand why you're doing this. Ethan, he's not the man I thought he was. And I can see now that you were never the problem. You were the only one trying. I stared at the message, feeling a flicker of something inside me. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was the faintest thread of hope that someday Linda would understand. But then I remembered the conversations we had after I died in my last life. How quickly she had moved on, how easily she had let go of me. And in that moment, I understood something crucial. Linda wasn't my family. Not really. She was just another extension of Ethan's world, and that world was no longer mine. I deleted the message. The following weeks in Yunnan blurred together, each day melting into the next as I immersed myself in the project. The early mornings spent wandering ancient streets, capturing photos, and documenting the hidden gems of the town felt like pure freedom. With each passing day, I could feel the remnants of the old Emily, the submissive, the ignored wife, slowly fading away. This new Emily was vibrant, full of life, and determined to carve her own path, regardless of who or what she had left behind. But even in the peace of Yunnan, there was a constant nagging feeling, something I couldn't quite shake. It was like a shadow looming over me, reminding me that Ethan hadn't truly let go. He still wanted me to believe that I was making a mistake, that our marriage wasn't as broken as I knew it was. But deep down, I wasn't just running from him, I was running towards something far more important. My phone rang, and I didn't even need to look at the screen to know who it was. Ethan had never truly understood the meaning of no, and when he couldn't control me through guilt, he resorted to something else: threats. Emily, you can't hide forever. His voice came through the line, cold, sharp. You think you've won, but this isn't over. You're making a huge mistake, and you'll regret it. My fingers tightened around the phone. There it was again, his attempt to take control, to make me feel like the villain in our story. His arrogance was suffocating, but it didn't scare me anymore. I'm not hiding, Ethan. I'm just done with you, I replied, my voice unwavering. And there's nothing you can say to change that. I don't regret it. Not now. Not ever. Silence followed, but this time, I didn't wait for his apology or pleading. I ended the call, setting the phone down as if a weight had been lifted. That was the moment I knew I had truly walked away. I had already forgiven myself for everything I had endured in that marriage. Ethan was no longer my burden to carry. I spent the next few days reflecting on my journey. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been moments when I doubted my decision, moments when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But I had learned something essential. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was the most powerful thing I could have done. I was living for myself now, and every day I spent working in Yunnan, every day I found myself growing stronger, more confident, more at peace. It confirmed that I was exactly where I needed to be. But as I continued to thrive in this new chapter of my life, the pressure of the divorce loomed. Ethan's lawyers were relentless. I had expected that, but the emotional toll was harder than I thought. Every time I received a letter or a call, Every time I saw Linda's name on my phone screen, the shadow of my past crept back into my mind. It was like I could never fully escape it. I thought I was ready, but when the court date was set, something inside me twisted. Was this truly the end? Would I ever get closure? Or was I still tied to him, bound by invisible threads? And then, in the middle of all this, I met someone. His name was Jason, a photographer from the travel program I had joined. He was quiet, thoughtful, and unlike anyone I'd known. He didn't see me as someone who had to fix herself. He saw me for who I was in the moment, someone strong, someone capable, someone who didn't need saving. Jason was different from Ethan, and for the first time, I realized how much I had been yearning for someone to truly see me, to appreciate me for who I was, not what I could do for them. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was a connection, something genuine. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel something other than anger or regret. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe without looking over my shoulder. Then came the letter. It arrived in the mail a week before the court date. The words on the page seemed to blur together at first, and for a moment, I thought I was seeing things. But when I read it again, the reality of the situation hit me harder than I expected. Ethan was requesting mediation. A part of me wanted to laugh. Ethan wasn't asking for reconciliation or an explanation. No, he was trying to stop the divorce in its tracks. He was trying to force me back into the corner he had always kept me in. I stared at the letter in disbelief. How could he still think he had any control over me? How could he believe that after everything, after all the lies, the neglect, the indifference, I would suddenly reconsider? I needed to speak to my lawyer. The meeting with my lawyer confirmed my worst fears. Ethan's legal team was prepared for a fight. They were determined to drag this out for as long as possible, to wear me down, to force me into submission. But I was done being passive. This wasn't just about a divorce anymore, it was about my dignity, my freedom. I want to go to court, I said firmly, my resolve stronger than ever. No more mediation. I'm not backing down. He can keep trying to delay this all he wants, but I'm done. This ends now. The lawyer gave me a knowing look. You're sure about this? I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It was the day before the court hearing when I received another unexpected message. This one was from Jason. We hadn't talked much outside of work, but he had always been kind, always supportive. This time, his message was simple. Emily, I've been thinking a lot about you. I'd like to talk if you have time. I felt a flutter of something in my chest. Maybe it was too soon. Maybe I wasn't ready for this. But then again, maybe I was. Maybe I was finally ready to let go of the past, to take a chance on something new. I replied quickly, I'd like that. Let's meet tomorrow. It wasn't love. Not yet, but something inside me shifted. Jason didn't need to be a perfect solution to all the pain I had endured. He didn't need to fix me. But I realized, for the first time in a long while, that maybe I didn't need fixing either. The day of the court hearing arrived. I stood at the courthouse doors, my heart pounding in my chest. My lawyer was with me, but it didn't matter. This was my fight. This was my moment. Ethan was already there, his usual self-calm, collected, and with that same arrogant air that always made me feel small. But today, it didn't have the same effect on me. Today, he was just a man who couldn't take back the years he had wasted. A man who had never once seen me for who I was. I stepped into the courtroom, my head held high, and took my seat. The battle had begun. As the trial began, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The air was thick with anticipation, each side bracing for the emotional warfare ahead. I could feel Ethan's gaze on me, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I felt no fear, only strength. I wasn't here to win his affection or his approval. I was here to reclaim what had always been mine, my dignity, my life, my freedom. The judge called the court to order, and the lawyers began their arguments. Ethan's attorney was already playing his cards, portraying our marriage as one full of love, sacrifice, and mutual respect. But I knew the truth, and that truth had no place for false pretenses. I wasn't about to let them twist the narrative. When it was my turn, I stood tall, staring straight ahead. The weight of my words was heavier than anything I had ever said. Before, Your Honor, I began, my voice unwavering. I am here today because I cannot live in the shadow of a marriage that was never real. I am here because I deserve a life where I am seen and heard, not ignored and dismissed. Ethan Cooper, did not love me. He loved the idea of me, the idea of a perfect wife who would always put him first. But I was never his priority. And that, Your Honor, is why I am asking for a divorce. The courtroom was silent as my words hung in the air. Ethan's face hardened, but there was no denying the truth I had just laid bare. I could see it in his eyes, the flicker of recognition, the understanding that he had failed me in ways he would never be able to repair. He tried to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. Ethan, don't pretend to be sorry now. Don't pretend that you care. I've been living this lie for years. Now, I'm done. I will not be manipulated. Not by you. Not by anyone. I deserve more than this. I could feel the sting of Ethan's silence, but it wasn't a sting I was afraid of. It was the truth, raw and unrelenting, finally spilling out. I wasn't the woman I used to be, the one who had stayed silent, who had believed the lies. No more. The judge turned to Ethan, and for the first time, I saw him falter. He hesitated, his face twisted in frustration, but he didn't speak up. He knew, just like I did, that the facade was crumbling. The walls he had built around his career, his reputation, his life, they were all falling apart. Ethan's lawyer stepped in, attempting to save face, but the damage had already been done. They could no longer spin this as they had hoped. The truth was clear, and I wasn't backing down. The rest of the hearing felt like a blur. The hours dragged on as both sides presented their cases, but the outcome was already sealed. I knew what would happen. I could feel it in my bones. Ethan had made one mistake after another, and now he would face the consequences of his actions. As the judge adjourned the session and promised a verdict within a week, I didn't look at Ethan. I didn't need to. He had already shown me who he was, and nothing would change that. I stood up, ready to leave, but then I heard his voice, soft, almost desperate. Emily. I stopped in my tracks, my heart sinking. There was no reason to turn around. I didn't need to hear his pleas anymore. He had already told me who he was through his actions. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The next few days passed in a haze. I was numb to everything that was happening around me, the constant phone calls from Ethan, the letters from his lawyers, the rumors swirling among the military wives. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. What mattered was that I was finally free, and yet there was still a small part of me that couldn't help but wonder, what if? What if this was all a mistake? What if I was being too harsh? What if I regretted walking away from everything I had once thought I wanted? But then I remembered, this was not my fault. Ethan had made the choice when he neglected me, when he ignored my pain, when he put everything else ahead of me. And now, I was making my own choice. I was choosing to live for myself. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. It was from my lawyer, and his voice was unusually serious. Emily, the court has made its decision. I sat up straight, feeling my pulse quicken. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. They've granted the divorce, my lawyer said, and it's final. I felt the world shift beneath me. My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of the words hit me. It was over. It was really over. No more fighting. No more pretending. I had won. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't a wife anymore. I wasn't someone's property, someone's possession. I was me again. And that felt like a victory greater than any I had ever imagined. As I hung up the phone, I let the emotions wash over me. There was relief, yes, but also something more, something I couldn't quite name. It was as if the last piece of a puzzle had finally clicked into place. I had fought for my freedom, for my voice, for my life. And now, I had it. But there was no time to dwell on the past. I had a life to live, a future to create. I wasn't going to spend another moment looking back. I had already made that mistake once. A few days later, I was sitting in a cafe with Jason. He had been a constant, steady presence in my life over the past few months, and now I realized something important. He didn't ask for anything from me. He didn't want to fix me. He just saw me. We were talking about nothing and everything, but it felt easy. It felt right. Jason wasn't a solution to my problems, but he was someone who made me realize that I didn't need to solve everything. I didn't need to fix myself. Emily, Jason said, his voice low and sincere. I just want you to know that I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel pressured. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. I could just be. And as I looked at Jason, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was ready for something new, something real, something That was for me. That evening, as I lay in bed, I received another text from Ethan. I saw the papers. I know I lost you, and I know it's my fault, but I'll never stop regretting it. I will always love you. I stared at the message for a long time. A small part of me wanted to respond, to say something, but I knew better now. This wasn't about me fixing him. This was about me living for myself. I deleted the message. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. There was no more baggage, no more emotional chains. The past was behind me, and my future was waiting. I was free. The days following the divorce felt like I was stepping into a completely new life, one I hadn't imagined, one I hadn't even allowed myself to dream about. The weight that had settled on my chest for years had finally lifted, and with it came a rush of possibilities. I was no longer trapped by the expectations of a marriage that never fulfilled me. I was free to chase my own dreams, to take back everything I had once given up for someone else. But it wasn't just about freedom. It was about reclaiming myself. Every moment, every decision felt like an act of defiance against the woman I used to be, the one who was always second, always willing to put everything on hold for someone who never cared enough to notice. I spent the next few weeks focusing on my work. The travel feature I had been working on was nearly complete, and the magazine editor was already inquiring about my next assignment. Each project, each article, was a reminder that I still had value, that I was still capable of making something of myself without anyone's approval or help. One afternoon, I sat in a cafe in Yunnan, sipping my coffee, and I realized something that took me completely by surprise. I was happy, really happy. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to fake a smile. I didn't have to pretend that everything was okay when it wasn't. My life was mine, and that feeling of being completely and utterly free was more exhilarating than I could have imagined. But even as I found joy in the quiet moments, the storm of my past was never too far behind. There was always something in the back of my mind, the worry that maybe, just maybe, I had made a mistake. What if I was being too harsh? What if Ethan really did love me? What if, in his own messed up way, he had actually tried to show me that he cared? I pushed those thoughts aside quickly. No, I wasn't going to let guilt back into my life. I was finally free from the chains of a marriage that never should have happened in the first place. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message that immediately made my stomach drop. It was from Linda. "Emily, please. Ethan, he's in the hospital. It's serious. I need you to come, please." My heart skipped a beat. The world around me seemed to slow down. For a moment, I could barely breathe. Ethan had always been strong and touchable in his own way, but now, here he was, vulnerable, in need of someone. It felt like a cruel twist of fate, like the universe was mocking me. I stared at the message for what felt like hours, the uncertainty crashing over me. This was the man who had neglected me when I needed him the most, the one who had turned his back when I was at my lowest. And now, he wanted me to come to his side? But then I thought of what had happened in my last life. I had been so focused on his absence, so desperate for his attention, that I had lost myself. I couldn't go back to that woman. I couldn't give up the strength I had fought so hard to gain. I sent a simple reply. I can't. I'm not coming. For a second, I thought about how it might feel to be there with him, to comfort him, to show him what he had lost. But then, the clarity washed over me again. I wasn't his to comfort anymore. I wasn't his at all. I turned off my phone and went back to my work, letting the moment pass. It wasn't easy. It never would be. But I knew it was the right decision. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, writing, traveling, meeting with clients, but there was always something gnawing at the back of my mind. What if I was making a mistake? What if Ethan really needed me? I shook the thoughts away as best I could. I wasn't going to let myself fall back into that cycle. I was stronger now. I had built this new life for myself, and I wasn't going to let anything, especially not Ethan, drag me back to the dark place I had just escaped. But then, the phone call came. It was the hospital. They said Ethan was in critical condition after a work-related accident. He had sustained serious injuries, and they couldn't reach any of his family members. They asked if I would come in and sign the consent forms for surgery, as I was still listed as his emergency contact. I felt the world tilt beneath me. A part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room, to scream, to cry. But another part of me, one I didn't recognize, felt something more. It wasn't love. It wasn't concern. It was something else. Compassion, maybe. Empathy. The barest, hint of the woman I used to be, the one who had loved him so deeply. I didn't have much time to think. I quickly gathered my things and rushed to the hospital, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to care, but I couldn't ignore the human side of it. When I arrived at the hospital, the nurse led me to his room, and there he was, lying unconscious in the bed. His face was pale, his body covered in bandages and tubes. For a brief moment, my heart twisted. This was the man I had once loved, the man who had shattered me, the man who had never once bothered to show up when I was sick or hurting. I stepped closer, the memories flooding back. How could I have ever let myself become so entangled in his world? He wasn't a hero. He wasn't the man I had idealized. He was just a man, flawed, broken, human. The doctor handed me the consent form, and I hesitated. It was the right thing to do. I couldn't deny that. But as I looked at Ethan, something inside me cracked. This wasn't about saving him. This wasn't about trying to fix something that had never been whole. It was about closure. I signed the form and left the room, not looking back. I didn't need to. I had given him what he needed, but I had nothing left to give. I couldn't deny the emotions swirling inside me, but I refused to let them control me. I was free to live my life the way I wanted, free to move forward. And this time, I was doing it for me. Days later, I received a text from Jason. I've been thinking about you. I know you've been through a lot lately, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whenever you're ready, we can talk. I didn't know where this would go, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of love. The next few days passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. The hospital incident with Ethan lingered in my mind, but so did the message from Jason. I had been avoiding the thought of starting something new for so long, too afraid of repeating the mistakes of my past. But I knew deep down that this was different. Jason wasn't like Ethan. He had never tried to change me, to mold me into something I wasn't. He saw me for who I was, and for the first time in years, I realized that maybe I deserved that. I walked through the quiet streets of Yunnan, heading to the cafe where I had agreed to meet him. I tried to push aside the doubt creeping into my mind. What if I wasn't ready for this? What if I was just seeking comfort, filling a void that had been left in me? But the truth was, I wasn't looking for a quick fix. I wasn't looking for someone to save me. I was looking for a partner, someone who could stand beside me, not in front of me or behind me. When I arrived at the cafe, Jason was already there, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee in front of him. He smiled when he saw me, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. It was like everything I had been through led me to this moment, to this person who made me feel like I mattered, not because of what I could give him, but because of who I was. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and welcoming. "I'm glad you could make it." I sat down across from him, the familiar nervousness bubbling up inside me. But it wasn't the same nervousness I had felt when Ethan and I first met. It wasn't anxiety or fear of not being good enough. This was different. It was the quiet thrill of possibility. "I'm glad to be here," I replied, my voice steady. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing, our work, our passions, our lives. There was no rush, no pressure. It felt easy, natural, and as the conversation flowed, something inside me shifted. I had been so focused on the past, so caught up in the wreckage of my marriage, that I had forgotten what it was like to just enjoy life, to be present in the moment. "I've been thinking a lot about you, Emily," Jason said, breaking the silence between us. "And I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not asking for anything right now, but if you want to see where this could go, I'm willing to try. No pressure, just us seeing where things take us." I looked at him, my heart racing, and for the first time, I realized how far I had come. A year ago, I would have been terrified of this, of the vulnerability, of opening myself up again. But now, all I felt was a quiet sense of peace. I wasn't looking for perfection. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but I knew I wanted to find out. "I think I'd like that," I said softly. "I'm not sure what I'm ready for, but I'd like to see where this goes too." He smiled, and it was as if the weight of everything I had been carrying lightened just a little more. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Between working on my articles, planning future projects, and spending time with Jason, I felt more alive than I had in years. It wasn't just about finding someone new, it was about finding myself again. reclaiming the pieces of me that had been lost along the way. But as much as I wanted to move forward, the past kept knocking on my door. I still couldn't escape Ethan's presence entirely. I saw his name pop up on my phone every once in a while, his messages, his attempts to reach me. I had ignored him all this time, but something in me told me it was time to finally face him, to put the last piece of the puzzle in place and let go completely. One afternoon, as I sat with Jason in the park, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend like it never happened. But I couldn't. I had to do this. I had to face the man who had once been my everything and say goodbye for good. I have to take this, I told Jason, standing up and walking away to give myself a moment of privacy. When I answered, Ethan's voice came through tired, hoarse. Emily. I didn't say anything at first. I just let his voice hang there, like a thread that was about to snap. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need to say something. Something I should have said a long time ago. I felt the bitterness rise in my throat. He still didn't get it, did he? I'm listening, I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. I've been a fool, he said quietly. I can't imagine how much pain I caused you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I don't know how to fix it, but I wanted you to know that I do love you. I always have. The words hung in the air between us, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of something. Maybe it was the faintest trace of the woman I used to be. But then I remembered the truth about who he was, the man who had left me when I needed him most, the man who had chosen everything else over me. I don't believe you, I said, my voice shaking with the emotion I had refused to show for so long. You never loved me. You loved the idea of me, the perfect wife, the one who would always stand by you, no matter what. But that wasn't love, Ethan. That was control. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him processing my words, and for the first time, I realized I didn't care. I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need him to feel regret. Goodbye, Ethan, I said, the finality of it ringing in my ears. I hung up without waiting for him to say anything more. And in that moment, something inside me broke free. This wasn't about closure or forgiveness. This was about freedom. Freedom from the past. Freedom from the hurt. Freedom from the man who had never seen me for who I really was. I walked back to Jason, who was sitting on the bench, waiting for me. As I sat down beside him, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. Ethan's chapter was over. My story was just beginning. Weeks passed, and with each one, I felt more and more like myself. I was living for the first time in years, no longer bound by anyone else's expectations or mistakes. I traveled, I wrote, I laughed, and through it all, Jason was there. Not to fix me, but to simply walk beside me, offering a quiet presence I had never realized I needed. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The phone rang again, one late evening, while I was at home working. This time, the number was unfamiliar, and when I picked it up, the voice on the other end was not someone I expected. Emily, it's Linda. I froze. The sound of her voice immediately brought a lump to my throat. Emily, I just wanted to say, I've been thinking a lot. I know things are over between you and Ethan, and I've made peace with that. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. You've always been strong, and I was wrong to push you away. I didn't know what to say at first. Linda had always been an extension of Ethan's world, someone who had never truly understood me. But now, as she spoke, I realized something. She wasn't trying to fix me. She was just acknowledging the woman I had become. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. And for the first time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't the woman who had to prove herself to anyone. Not anymore. The next morning, Jason and I boarded a plane for Tibet. It wasn't about escaping. It was about starting something new together. We sat in the airplane, the sun setting outside, casting a warm glow over the horizon. And as the plane ascended into the clouds, I felt lighter than I had in years. This time, I wasn't running away. I was embracing everything that was to come. This is where the story ends for now. But for me, it's just the beginning.